Well, hello guys. I thought what I would do today is come on and basically kind of, I suppose, spill the beans and say some truths that need to be said. I think, as most of you probably know by now, you know, I don't. I think most of you will have known that, my life here in Thailand hasn't exactly been, if you can even really call it a life, and I'll explain what I mean by that in a moment. But I can't really say that my life has been ideal necessarily. Really easy, comfortable, absolutely, but positive, motivating, useful, healthy, functional. Not really. Am I grateful? Do I feel privileged and happy that I got the chance to live here? Absolutely. I've been a lot luckier than a lot of people, and I'll always be thankful to the Thai authorities for allowing me to stay this long, which they didn't have to. And I'm a guest here, and I've been privileged enough to being able to be given the opportunity to stay, more or less, pretty much getting on near 10 years. But I think there's just a point in one's life where you start to reevaluate things and you start to prioritize things and kind of take a good look at your life and think to yourself, where do you want to be 5, 10 years down the line, and is your current situation the one that you want to continue living for the foreseeable future? And whether that happens to be in your 30s, 40s, 50s, or older than that, it's kind of irrelevant, really. But we all eventually go through that point, and I've been going through that these kind of past, say, really kind of the last 7 years, really, to be honest. I think kind of things went quite as bad, maybe in some ways, during the COVID pandemic, because I suppose in a way, admittedly, it kind of worked in my favor because it's like I suppose in a way I kind of did quite like that era, that period of time in some ways, because I mean, obviously I didn't like the fact that we all had to get vaccinated and we were all locked down. I don't mean like that, but there was a kind of happiness to some extent in that kind of isolated period. Obviously, if we'd have known all the consequences that would have come with it, I don't think any of us would have got on board with it. But anyway, that's another whole nother thing, and I don't want to get into a whole big conversation about that. But when I first came here to Thailand, admittedly, I didn't really come here with any real great expectations, to be honest. I mean, when I first came to Asia to begin with, I only really expected to be here for a couple of weeks. I mean, I've mentioned it before, but the circumstances that led me to come into Asia were basically it was kind of frustration with being unemployed, which is ironic because that's essentially where I am now. It's funny how things can come full circle sometimes in life, and I'll explain. I'll hold up. I will explain what's led to that in just a second, but so it's funny how things can kind of change, and you think things are going to work out, and then just kind of over time, gradually, things kind of just start crumbling apart, and I think that's just generally kind of been my life really for the last sort of decade. It's just things kind of just crumbling apart slowly but surely, and just kind of one bad choice after the next, and it is all my fault. That's just the reality of it. It's like I made the decisions I thought I was making the right choices, like we all do when we're younger. We're all a bit wild and careless, I suppose, and carefree when we're in our youth. But I think really since the pandemic, I've just kind of been reminiscing a lot and looking back on things and kind of taking stock of my life and just kind of, it's like I'm aware of what other people are doing from school, my old friends and things. It's like, and it just, and I know you shouldn't compare yourself to others, but I mean, we all inevitably do, because we all want to feel some sense of self-worth. And I think, some degree of meaning and purpose out of life. And I think really when those things start to diminish, or when those things completely disappear, then that's when you start to become a dysfunctional adult, really. Because when you don't have that routine, when you don't have that discipline, you've essentially really got nothing. You don't have anything in life without that. It's just the days just kind of roll on by, the weeks, the months, the years go by, and before you know it, it's nothing's changed. You're not going anywhere. Life's not going. It's not taking any kind of a shape, and you've got no direction at all, and it's just before you know it, it's just the same thing. The day repeats itself again and again and again. It's like, and you just get to a point where you just think, is this what my life has come to? The reason I came over here to begin with was what I was supposed to be saying a few minutes ago. I went on a bit of a tangent, but the reason I came over here was out of desperation, frustration, really. At the time, I'd lost my job, I'd had a bit of money saved, and my ex at the time suggested maybe I come over to Asia for a bit. I didn't know at that time that I'd be here some 8+ years later. I had no idea. I really didn't have any intentions to ever stay. I didn't even think I could stay here. Certainly, I didn't have any interest in staying in Cambodia or Vietnam or Laos. That just didn't appeal to me, really. And I don't think it does to most expats for a number of reasons. One is just they're just not quite. They just don't have the kind of Western feel that Thailand has, I suppose. Certainly in Bangkok, anyway. And I think while there's a lot of passive aggressiveness in Thai people, not everybody, but a lot of people, they tend to be a lot more. They're a bit more welcoming. They're a bit more kind of tolerant. I think they're a bit more understanding, and I don't know, maybe a little bit more civilized in some ways, perhaps. But essentially, I lost my job, and I just was like really depressed and down, and I just decided, fuck it. I was 24. What did I have to lose? I had nothing to lose. What was I going to do? Be unemployed again? Because that was basically what was going to happen. I was going to end up on welfare again, and it's like, and I would have never. It's not, just by coming over here, it's not like I've had this like epiphany or anything. It's not like I've had this like golden ticket opportunity of a life or anything. It's just that, I've been lucky enough to have had some experiences and to have had a bit of traveling that I wouldn't have had. If I hadn't have took that plunge, I would never have had this life. So in that regard, I'm kind of glad I did it. But I think, as time goes on, it's like there comes a point where you can't just live that. You can't just continue living that kind of go with the flow kind of attitude. It doesn't work anymore. It's all good and well when you're in your early to mid 20s because you're young. You've got time to kind of mess up, and it doesn't really matter. It's like you can kind of get away with it at that point. Although if you're wise and smart enough, you won't do that. But I suppose the problem is I was just directionless. I didn't have a pathway in life. I had no sense of, I didn't have any sense of kind of like what I wanted to do with my life. I didn't really have any real idea of what I wanted to do as a career or a job, really. And, that's kind of just why I ended up just kind of applying for anything. I got this job as a furniture porter, traveling up and down the UK for a few months. I think I was there about 3 months, and then they basically said, we don't think you're basically right fit. Anyway, it doesn't matter in the end. Anyway, the company went into a liquidation, and it's gone now. So it wouldn't have lasted anyway. It's like I didn't particularly like the job, and admittedly, and I've mentioned it before anyway, I wasn't particularly very competent at it. So it is my own fault to some degree, but it's also, I suppose, I didn't exactly get much training, and I think they had unrealistic expectations probably in some ways. But that's the background of it. Just kind of year after year of just being disappointed in myself in my early 20s. I was just like, well, what am I going to do with my life? I've got to do something. And so I thought, well, I'll give it a shot, see what works out, and if nothing else, I've got a return ticket. So if it doesn't pan out, I'll come back. But then kind of gradually, I came to Thailand, and then kind of worked for a little bit for like a summer camp kind of thing. Eventually got a job in a school. I didn't have a degree, didn't even have a bloody teaching certificate. I had nothing at the time. And then that position inevitably came to an end because the school was getting strict, and they didn't want to get in trouble with the Ministry of Education, all the rest of it. So I basically ended up getting kind of sidelined, and kind of being exploited to some degree, I suppose, in many ways, looking back on it. But it's like I made the choice to take it up, and it was my, it's like I take responsibility for that. I didn't have to work illegally, but I did, and I shouldn't admit that, but that's the truth. And admittedly, that's what I have been doing here for the past few years, been working here illegally. Now you could say, well, maybe you shouldn't admit that. Well, you know what? It doesn't matter because I'm leaving soon anyway. And that's kind of why I wanted to get on here and open up about it, and why that's happening, why that's going to happen. So, I had a number of positions in teaching in schools, and that just wasn't for me. It just really wasn't for me in the end. I just don't have the kind of, I think the truth of it is I just don't have the resilience. I don't have the attitude. I don't have the positivity, and really probably more than anything else, I just don't really have the extroversion and the kind of bouncy kind of, kind of performative kind of character that you essentially kind of need in that kind of work. And it just wasn't for me. And I also knew very early on that the education system here is essentially a bit of a joke, really. It's more about ticking boxes and fake smiles and kind of, what do they call it, edutainment, rather than actual real education. And it's like, and really, what right do I have anyway to be here? I'm not a qualified teacher, so it's like. But I appreciate that I got the chance to do those things. I'm glad that I got to spend time with my students at the time. And I wish every single one of those people well, and I hope they go on to do good things in life. And I really mean that. I really do. I had some great times as a teacher. When I say teacher, I say it loosely, really. But I suppose in a way I was. At least I tried my best to be as such. But in the end, there was just all sorts of things that kind of I grew tired of. If it wasn't the drama in the office with, insecure Filipino teachers because they weren't getting paid enough, or the Thai teacher assistants that just didn't pull a finger out when they could see you were struggling in the classrooms. If it wasn't that, it was toxic management, toxic agencies. It was just one thing after the other, really. And in the end, 2 years in, I was just like, fuck this. It's just, there was just no, for me, there was just no point in continuing on with that kind of, that way of life. I gave it a shot, and I just very quickly realized that, you kind of, you're swimming against the tide kind of thing. It's like you're trying to you're trying to fit yourself into something that's just not. It's not. It's not going to work. It's just not going to work. You don't have the kind of. I just don't think really I had the kind of the right personality for it. Whether that's because I'm too kind of direct and honest and open, or it's because I kind of just I just see things as I think they genuinely are. I'm just very observant, and I think a lot about things, and I just realised that I wasn't making a difference to these people in any way. It's like yeah, and you could say, well, it's just do it for the salary. It's like, well, yeah, that's all going to well, but when you're only earning £800 a month, which is essentially what I was earning in when you convert the salary that I was getting per month, which was about 35 to 40,000 Thai baht, into pounds. At the time it was probably what 800, 900 pound a month, I think, maybe not even that. I think at the very most I made something like 70,000 Thai baht, I think, which is probably, I don't know, maybe 1,000, maybe 1,200, 1,300 pounds or something, maybe. I really wasn't making a lot of money. Obviously, compared to some of the teachers in this country, I was making quite a bit of money, I suppose, but not really. It's like if you've got a decent career job, you're probably going to make twice as much as that. But for the most part, most kind of civil servants or government school teachers and stuff, they're probably earning maybe 20,000, 25,000 at the most, probably. So in that way, again, I was lucky, and again, I'm grateful for it, and I'm glad that I was able to do what I did, and I tried my best, and and I did have some good times. I'm not going to sit here and say it was all bad, because it wasn't. It was a mixture, but I suppose weighing up the kind of deeper, more serious stuff, it was like just wasn't. I just didn't think it was worth it in the end. It just wasn't worth the level of commitment, of planning, of energy, and it was just fucking exhausting. I was just constantly exhausted all the time, and I just got to a point where I was just like, I don't want to do this with my life. This is not how I want to spend my life or waste it away. Certainly not in a traditional setting. So in a way, going back to the COVID thing, once that came along, and I suppose in a way that was kind of ideal, because that kind of then justified having to teach online, and I was kind of I think I was already doing that maybe before that. I can't quite remember, to be honest. I may have been, I'm not sure. But certainly during the pandemic, I was teaching online, and that's, give or take, that's essentially what I've been doing here since 2019. 20 I can't remember, it may have been 2020 or 2021, I'm not sure, when I started online teaching. I can't really remember, to be honest. It feels like a lifetime ago now, but anyway, it's besides the point. So in the end, I was just like, you know what, I just think I thought I'll give the online thing a chance, the private tuition thing a chance, and I think probably I did actually quite well. I taught young kids, I taught adults, I taught teenagers, and I think to some extent, I did gain some degree of, it was rewarding at times. It was, I think that it was a good thing to do, but it was certainly challenging at times, because it wasn't, there was always some kind of a problem, always something, and just again, I think just like any job or career, after a number of years, you just kind of think to yourself, things just start kind of bogging you down, really. It's like kind of, and it just at some point you just kind of find yourself in quicksand, that kind of sort of feeling mentally, kind of just that kind of I don't know, it's just like a kind of depression type thing starts coming over you, and you just think to yourself, I've got to get out of this. I've got to move on. I've got to do something else, and that's where I'm at now. So that was kind of a bit of a long-winded explanation of how I'm feeling today, but it's all relevant. So why do I want to leave? Why am I going to leave? Well, that's part of it. You know, the kind of disillusionment, the dissatisfaction with teaching, and gradually just kind of getting bored of it, getting frustrated with it, getting frustrated with the students, the parents, and just a general feeling that this is just not for me anymore. You know, I very recently quit teaching two students, two lads, brothers, because they were just kind of taking the piss in the end. You know, it's like for a period of time, you know, there was a lot of stability there, and you know they were quite you know, quite reliable, kind of well mannered, respectable, you know, polite lads really. But just over time, they just kind of started to become unmotivated, lazy, and I just think it's just shitty parenting, really. I think that's essentially what's to blame, because, you know, these kids, they come from a kind of well-to-do family, and like a lot of kids who come from kind of more middle class, let's say, backgrounds, you know, they're just incredibly entitled, spoiled, and just they've just got no respect for foreigners, you know, and why would they? And so I suppose as well, alongside that, over time, I kind of just started to become a bit complacent, and kind of just was just like, you know what, if you're not going to bother, then I'm just not going to bother either. I'm not going to, I'm gonna match your energy, kind of thing. Because I got tired of it. I got tired of trying to. I just got tired of trying to put on a face all the time that I'm happy, that everything's great, wonderful, and that everything's going to work out, and it's not, and it's just all been shit for the past few years. Really shit in some ways. Yes, okay, I've had a easy life because I haven't had to work full time, but you know, it's just like, you know, when you get up every morning, you've got nothing to do because you've only got a small number of teaching sessions, or hardly any at all, which is the case now. Then you know, it just starts to kind of, you know, things just kind of start falling apart brick by brick. You know, it's like, and that's how I feel about my life now. It's just things have just gone from bad to worse, really. And I accept, you know, I made the choices to teach privately. I made the decision to cut off certain students for the reasons I've just said. But some of them also um, just didn't want to learn anymore because they wanted to focus on other subjects. Some of them were kind of like as and when, and I just got tired of it all. There's just no consistency. There's no real stability in it, and you know, for the amount of money that you get, I mean, you got to, you know, you do have to ask yourself, you know, is it really worth it in the end? Is this line of work, is it worth your time? Is it worth the effort? Is it worth dedicating yourself? And I've come to the conclusion that the answer to that is a big no. I don't think it is. You know, as I've said before, if you come here to teach maybe in a college or university setting, or an international school, let's say, where, you know, I mean, the thing is with those kind of things, you have to be a genuine teacher. For everything else, you can pretty much get away with being a native English speaker, as they say, and you know, essentially meaning, you know, you come from a Western country, you can speak English, you know, you pretty much know the foundations of your language in terms, and you know, you've got some kind of ability to teach it. And I just don't really give a shit, to be quite frank. I really just, I just don't care anymore. I've really just have given up. I really have. I've just given up, completely given up. That's the truth. That's the cold, harsh truth of it. I just don't fucking care anymore. I don't want I just don't want to do this anymore. I don't want to teach anymore. That is just the bottom. That is it. I just can't. I just can't do it anymore. I can't deal with it anymore. I can't stand it anymore. So that's why I'm going to leave. And you might be thinking, well, can't you do anything else there? Yeah, if you've got a lot of money, if you've got the right contacts where you can start a business, or you can, I don't know, if you can like, if you want to be a scuba diver, or you want to be I know if you've got some kind of if you're an entrepreneur or something like that, then it's like, yeah, you've got a chance at like doing something else. But you can say, well, why don't you try like, I don't know, some other sectors? It's like the chances. I have tried, and the chance, it's like I was even looking at like getting into acting at one time, but it's just a waste of time. You can't make a life out of it here, out of those things, and that's what the Thai government wants. They don't want foreigners here. They'll never admit it, but they don't want you here. They only really want foreigners over here on holiday, really. Unless you've got a shit ton of money where you can afford to get what they call an elite visa, and then you've got, I think that gives you like a decade, I think, here. So unless you're one of those, unless you meet that criteria, then you've got no chance. You really don't. I've been looking into recently getting into some kind of a hotel hospitality kind of position of some sort. But again, the vast majority of these hotels, they don't want foreigners working for them. If they do, it's only ASEAN surrounding Asian country workers, really, so they can pay them a lot less, because some of them can speak English very well. So why would they want some guy from the UK or America, Canada, Australia, wherever, who's going to ask for a salary of twice what they would pay someone from Burma or Cambodia or Laos or some other kind of sort of still kind of developing nation, really, in many respects, which is why these people come here, and I don't blame them. So I get it. I understand. I get it. It wouldn't be right for foreigners to get priority over every single job sector, career here over the local Thai population, and that's fair enough. And I don't particularly see any issue with it, apart from the fact that I think it should be a little bit wider. I think the employment options here should be kind of widened a little bit more, really. And maybe they'll do that in the future. But anyway, and on top of all this, kind of just the kind of slow progression towards the kind of realization that, just kind of, it's just a gut instinct that I just don't think things are gonna. I just don't think things are, in my personal life, are really gonna. I just don't think they're going to be productive, and I don't think they're going to make me happy in the long term. And I think also I'm not going to bring anybody else any real sense of happiness in this current situation, because there's, as far as I'm concerned, I can't justify it to myself being here any longer, really, because I'm at a point now where I'm basically broke, which wasn't the case just not that long ago, but I am now. I basically owe a lot of money, really, and I just feel generally kind of miserable, to be honest, being here now. It's like it wasn't always like that, but I think that's partly because I haven't really had a routine, a kind of rigid, kind of disciplined life for so long, and it's just like every day is kind of just meaningless, really. I wake up, take care of the dogs, have my breakfast, and apply for jobs that I don't want, and I'm not going to get anywhere, and I never get anything back these days anyway. I very rarely get any emails back from any of employers, and even when they do, they always give you vague bullshit answers, and they never answer your questions properly. And so you just know that they're trying to fucking swindle you. That you know that they're going to exploit you and try and take the piss and manipulate you once they get you signed into that contract. And I'm just at a point now where I'm just like I'm just done with a whole lot of it. I don't, it's like I'm honestly at a point now where I'm just not even bothering to apply for jobs. I've just given up. And because obviously as well, after so many years of private teaching, most of these employers are just like, well, we can't justify taking you on. You're 35 now. It's like you haven't really got any classroom experience, and they're right. So again, that comes back to me. That's a reflection of me, and again, I hold my hands up and accept that I made that choice. But I thought at the time that I'd be able to make a little bit of money out of it, enough to kind of have a somewhat of a life. But it just didn't work. It just didn't work. It just hasn't worked out. I've made mistakes, and I accept that. Okay, I'm not saying that everything is down to me, but some of the I probably could have handled some situations better over here, over time. And I'm not going to sit here and play the victim and pretend that it's everybody else. It's like, well, no, I did some things that I'm not particularly happy about, not proud of, and said some things and pissed some people off probably along the way. But I never really meant any. It was never malicious. It was never like any real bad intent behind anything. It's just that I was just trying to be honest and real with people. And apparently, we live in a world that rejects that kind of approach to life. So you don't realize that you 1 minute you're 20 and then you're 35, and it's like you're kind of staring down the barrel of a gun. You're staring at your mortality, staring at the fact that your family's getting older, your parents are aging, your grandparents are gone, your friendships have all dwindled, your marriage isn't perhaps the most successful. You're stuck in a kind of trapped in something you didn't want to do in the first place, but you thought you'd give it a shot, but then it just slowly kind of eroded your confidence and your happiness over time. But again, I thought I was doing the right thing, but I was too naive and I didn't really think ahead. I didn't plan ahead. And that's the problem with me. That's the problem with my life since leaving school, is that I haven't really done any planning. I haven't really thought about the future. I just lived for now and kind of screw the kind of whatever comes later, whatever happens later happens. And that's all good and great when you're young, but like as time goes on, it's like, as I'm fast approaching 40, midlife, I'm now sitting here thinking to myself, well, reflecting on my life and thinking, well, what have I done with my life? I haven't really had a real job or career in about a decade. I haven't had any real genuine holidays for years. I haven't developed any new friendships. I haven't really learned anything. I haven't really done much at all, really, to be quite honest with you, the last few years. And it's like my life's just kind of become really hollow, really shallow, just kind of really incredibly tedious, boring, it's just like, and I'm just like, it's like, how long can I go on living like this? I don't know, my wife's not happy about things. I know she's pissed off with me because I'm not bringing any money in, and she's got a new car she's going to be paying for soon. She's got a house to pay for, and I'm just thinking, well, it's like, well, what? As I said before, it's like, how can I justify staying here if I'm not contributing in any kind of, it's like, if I can't contribute to this situation, then I suppose I don't have a right to be here. Because, let's face it, that's essentially what relationships are built upon. Two people putting in effort, two people contributing and adding something that benefits both and that gives you both a better life. And I just feel like I can't do that. I'm not that person, apparently. I'm not going to be able to satisfy you in that way, at least financially speaking. While I may satisfy you in other ways, that's not enough, is it? Let's just have the fucking truth here. It's like it's all good and well to be there emotionally or psychologically for someone, but the harsh reality is like if you got no money, it's like, yes, how long is it going to be before her eyes start wandering and looking at some other guy, because I know that that's the inevitability of this. She has an affair, she starts cheating, she starts treating me like garbage. How long is it going to be before that happens? It's already kind of happened, actually, on and off over the years. And most people don't know that. Belittling you, trying to put you down all the time, complaining, whinging, moaning about every fucking thing you do or don't do. And so there's that layer of all of this behind my decision to leave as well, Is this the right relationship? Is this the right person I want to be with for the rest of my life? And you know what? Honestly, truthfully, I really don't know anymore. I really don't know if this is the person I want to be with. And I know that I shouldn't share that. I know that I shouldn't own up to it, but on here at least. But there you go. You do start at some point thinking about kids. If I'm going to have children, I better start getting my shit together. Because how long is it going to be before my balls don't work anymore? 20 years? It's like I already know my metabolism slowed down. My testosterone's not what it used to be. I don't want to kind of overshare, but let's be honest about it. My sex drive isn't what it used to be either. And before I just won't be interested. There'll come a point where that ship has sailed, Whether it's at 40, 50, 60, I don't know, but there will come a day where that will happen. If I live long enough. So I'm thinking about that as well, It's like, and apparently my partner doesn't really want to have any kids, so it's like, well, if I did ever decide to have kids, well, that's kind of a deal breaker, isn't it, really? So while some people on my Facebook might think, oh, David, you do complain a lot, you do whinge, but you don't understand the story. You don't understand the true situation. Just like I don't understand yours, because I haven't lived it. You haven't lived mine. People might see the photos or videos from time to time, whatever, and think, oh, I wish I had that life. But it all comes at a cost, and it's all, there's always sacrifices you have to make along the way. And I sacrificed friendships, I sacrificed precious time with my loved ones that I could have been spending time with who passed away to come over here, because I thought that I was making a wise decision. And at the time, maybe in some ways it was. But inevitably, life moves on, things change, your priorities change, you get older, you get wiser, you've learnt some lessons, you've gone through some shit in 10 years, and here I am today. Things, there's no other way to put it. Things just haven't worked out. I'm lonely. I'm really depressed. I haven't got nobody to talk to. I've got nobody to share what I'm thinking, what I'm feeling with anybody, really, in any kind of meaningful way, without people resorting to, oh, we must break the tension, we must, crack a joke here and there, we must add some kind of a humor to this. So, well, why don't you go and see a therapist then? Because you can't hear. I've been to therapy. It doesn't work. It just doesn't work. It's not about me thinking negatively. It's about me thinking about it's about me accepting the reality of the situation, the reality of the crap choices I've made in life so far. It's about accepting that the world is what it is, that people are what they are, and that life isn't perfect, that life is a mind fuck. And people are mind fields, navigating all the complexities of people and situations and social norms and all that crap. It just gets fucking exhausting, and especially when in a situation like employment where you're surrounded by people, some of them who don't like you and you don't like them, and you're forced to kind of tolerate people's annoyances and obnoxiousness. I just didn't want to do that anymore. I just didn't want to be around that kind of stuff, especially with it's just always something. It's in these kind of office politics here. If it's not some arrogant, egotistical American getting any fucking tits, it's some insecure Canadian or some loudmouth Australian or some fucking passive aggressive Brit doing your nutting, or some insecure Burmese or Filipino or whoever, some Chinese guy fucking running his mouth or whatever it might be. It's just always something. It's always something that always disturbs, just always something that ruins it for you. And that's partly why I quit teaching in the traditional sense, because I couldn't take it. I couldn't stand it anymore. I didn't want to hear people's shitty life stories. I didn't want to hear people's bullshit small talk about what they're doing, what they're having to eat, what they're fucking doing, what it's like. I couldn't give a fuck. I couldn't give a fuck. People are always expecting something out of you. People are always expecting you to put on a show, to be a performer, to be a fucking clown, to in these kind of like camps here that you get forced into, where you're basically forced to fucking, act like a fucking circus piece for the next couple of days. So there's all that crap, there's all this toxic positivity, performative edutainment, just utter drivel, really. And it just doesn't suit me. Doesn't suit me at all. And I'm not going to force myself to be something that I'm not. And I'm not going to force myself to live a life that I don't want, to live a lie. I'm not going to force myself to be happy when I'm not happy. I'm not going to force myself anymore to be something for somebody else when they wouldn't do the same for you, I'm not going to be forced to give parts of myself to other people when they don't give it back to you. Fuck it. So I'm done. I'm done. I've made my decision now, and that is that I'm going to go back to England. Whether it's this year or next year, I don't know. But at some point, I'm going back to England because I've just had enough. There's no point me carrying on here. There's just no point. I know nothing's going to get better here. I know nothing's going to change. And so does my wife. She knows this. She knows what's going to happen here. She knows that I've had enough, that I'm bored. I'm bored with her. I'm bored with my life here. And I think deep down, she wants me to leave anyway. And probably has done for some time. But she just doesn't want to say it because, as I said a million fucking times, again and again and again, the saving face culture here prohibits ties from being open and honest, which is another whole mind fuck. So you never really know what they're feeling, thinking about you anyway. Even someone like your wife, your partner, someone that's supposed to be best friend here, you never really, and the thing is, you never really truly make real friends here anyway. People are passing through, people are here on holiday, and you meet people and they give you their social media or whatever. It's just like you never hear from them again. The amount of people that I've met over the time over here, you've added them online or on Facebook, and you know, before you know it, they've taken you off the Facebook, or you've blocked them for some reason, or it's just like you just never hear from them, and it's just like it's just all feels really false to me. It feels like, oh, come on, David, what the fuck are you doing here? What are you doing here, man? Come on, dude. It's like you're 35 years old. You've achieved fuck all. You've done nothing. You are nothing. What the fuck are you doing with your life, kid? What are you doing? Just wasting fucking precious time, wasting the best years of your life away. And for what? For who? I ain't got no savings. I ain't done jack shit for the last 10 years. I can't even drive. You know, I can't even bloody type properly. I don't know anything. I don't know how to do anything. I don't know anything. That's why there's no other options. I mean, even if there were other options, I wouldn't be able to do anything here. So it's like again, that's my fault. Part of it's down to laziness, I suppose. Part of it's just down to lacking in energy, lacking motivation, lacking ambition. But it's also because I was just deeply, deeply depressed, and I just felt trapped for so long, isolated. You know, nobody ever bothers to reach out to me. No one ever, you know, just nobody. That, you know, like, it's like I've said before, like the silence is really truly deafening. And when you don't have any kind of like emotional, social support from anyone, you just feel like, well, I might as well just go home. At least I've got my family there. You know, it's like at least I could potentially go and visit people if, you know, if I could reach out to people and go and see them. Whereas here, you know, I'm found, you know, I'm a few found, what am I, couple, I don't know what the distance is, but, you know, I'm a long, long way from home. And I just think to myself, you know, I can't imagine me being here another 5-10 years. Can't imagine. And the thing is, you know, the burning questions are: do I want to do the only thing that gives me any real sense of employment here? And the answer to that is no. And am I genuinely happy and wanting to stay in this situation in other ways? And you know what I mean by that. And I think probably the answer to that is no. So, you know, deep down, it's like, well, what are you going to do? You don't have any other options but to go on. I can't stay here. I'm not going to go and work illegally in a school. And quite frankly, to be honest, I just don't want to go through the malarkey of all the bureaucratic bullshit anymore. Even just getting a non-B visa here is a fucking palaver. And you might be saying, oh God, you do go on, you do whine. But you haven't lived it. You haven't had to deal with it. If I'd lived your life, you'd tell me about all the shitty little things that you've gone through, all the annoyances and crap that you've had to tolerate over time with your partner, with friends, with your family. If you'd lived here, you'd understand it. So people can sit there and play armchair judge or armchair therapist or whatever they want to do. But, you know, the reality is that unless you've, you know, and I hate to say it because it's always something that people say, but walked in my shoes, you just wouldn't understand. And I wouldn't, you know, I don't claim to understand anybody else's life fully. I can try to understand, but until I actually live their lives, I haven't got a clue. I don't know what it's like. I don't know what it's like to have kids. I don't know what it's like to be, you know, bogged down in a career that you're, where you might be making tons of money, but you're fucking miserable inside. Now, I don't know what it's like to actually have somebody you genuinely want to be with, because I've never had that. I've just always had situations that I felt I had to tolerate because I felt that it would empower me in some way. I felt that it would better my life in some way, and how incredibly wrong I was. Maybe at the time, maybe in some ways, yes, it was advantageous, but in the long term, none of this was smart. None of this was I didn't have any foresight. I didn't really think things through logically, I suppose. And I'm just tired of feeling this way. I'm tired of waking up every day and thinking to myself, what the fuck have I done to myself? What have I done to my life? Where do I go from here? How am I going to get out of this? How do I get out of this shit? Like seriously, how the fuck am I going to get out of this? What do I do? How do I actually get a real job, a career when I go back to England? Where am I going to stay? How am I going to make money? What am I going to do about my marriage? My life has just been in one horrible, nasty dilemma for so long that this is just how I am every day. I just feel incredibly frustrated and tired and just beyond like. And my wife asked, "Well, why don't you exercise? Why don't I exercise?" Really? That you're going to ask me that? Why don't you do this? Why don't you do that? Really? You're going to come up with that shit? I'm not doing things for the same reason that you're not doing things. Because you don't want to. Because you don't feel like it. Because there's no reason to. You don't feel motivated to do it anymore. That's where my life is. I've completely given up. I've given up on people. I've given up on employment. I've given up on politics. I've even kind of given up on my family to some extent. I'm just fucking done. I'm just utterly over it. And I just want to get the fuck out of this place. Because I just can't take it anymore. I've just fucking had enough of everything. I've got to leave. I've got to go back to go forwards. I don't want to, but I have to do it. I can't stay here. I'm sorry. I really am. I've stayed as long as I could, but I'm just at my breaking point now. I just can't fucking stand staying here anymore. There's no point me being here. And I know that's going to upset a lot of people. But do you know what? My well-being and my sense of peace trumps everything else in this life. This is my life that I have to live with. And I have to do what I feel is right for me. I've tolerated enough bullshit over the years that I didn't have to tolerate, but I did. And from fucking here on out, I'm not going to do that anymore unless I absolutely have to. I'm going to start prioritizing me. Because I fucking deserve it.